Hello friends, welcome back to Film Snap. The story begins with a man named Joe who was a manager at a company. One day when he woke up, he found himself locked in a jail-like building. He had no idea how he got there. Around him were high walls, an iron door in front, and a stone mill in the middle of the room. The poor man started frantically calling for help, but the prisoner in the next room told him to shut his mouth. Then a person near the bars came and asked this man what was happening. The man said that Joe had been given a narcotic drug, which was making him feel very depressed for several days. He introduced himself as Nick and advised Joe to rest, as the next day would be very difficult. Joe couldn't understand how to get out of there. Then the guard threw some food and a water bottle through the hole in the door. Joe rushed towards it and tried to explain to the guard that his wife was pregnant and he needed to go out, but the guard ignored him and the hole was closed. This injured Joe's hand. He then used his tie to bandage his hand and started eating the food. In the evening, a light suddenly appeared on the wall, and then a computerized voice welcomed him to the Advanced Career Training Program. Joe still didn't understand, so he asked Nick, who explained that this was a jail-like place created by their company, where people like Joe who didn't perform well at work were brought. The next morning, Joe got more food, and then he noticed a human skeleton buried in the ground. He got scared and asked Nick if someone had died here. Nick said that many people had died while working here. Joe couldn't understand how the company could do this to them. Nick said that before joining the company, they had all signed a contract approving this program, but no one had actually read the full contract, and now they had to face the consequences. The computerized voice then said that Joe would have to turn the stone mill from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., and he would get 1 point after each turn. He had to complete 50 turns per day, or else he would be punished. The prisoner with the fewest turns would have to sacrifice his life, even if he had completed his 50 turns. Joe begged to go home again, but Nick said it was no use. So he started working, and it was not easy to turn the heavy mill, but he put in his full effort and completed 100 turns by the end of the day, then fell asleep. But he woke up to the screams of a prisoner being sentenced to death. The next day, while eating, Joe told Nick that he had completed 100 turns, and Nick advised him not to work so hard, or the company would demand even more from him. But Joe thought that by working harder, he could get out of here sooner and meet his pregnant wife, Kate, again. As he was working, he remembered the day when he had gifted Kate a new house, which made her very happy. The next day, Kate asked Joe to take a day off from work to go to the doctor, but he hesitated, which made Kate very sad, as Joe prioritized work over family. Suddenly, the alarm went off, and Joe saw that he had completed 150 turns. The guard then called him to the door and asked him to undress, and Joe thought he would be killed, but he was just taken to a pool to bathe. This continued, and Joe kept working tirelessly in the scorching sun, drinking more water, which soon ran out. Nick told him they only got that much water to survive. Despite his exhaustion, Joe continued his work, remembering his promise to Kate to pay the hospital bill. Finally, he collapsed at the end of the day, and the AI said he had completed 370 turns. Resting, Joe noticed the name Alex written under the handle, and Nick told him that Alex was the only one who had managed to escape from here alive. The company had given Joe a pen as a reward, but it was of no use to him, so he got angry and started shouting. The next day, Joe saw that instead of 50, he now had to complete 370 turns. He said he couldn't do so many turns with his injured hands, but the computerized voice said that humans can do more than they think. Joe started turning the mill, but he didn't get any points after 1 turn. The computer explained that as a punishment, he would get 1 point for every 2 turns. Now he had no choice but to keep working, but in the end, his body gave up, and he collapsed. The voice then said he hadn't completed the day's turns, and a picture of Kate appeared on the wall, saying that if Joe didn't work, Kate would also have to come here. This scared Joe, and he promised to complete the target the next day. The next day, Joe patted the handle with his coat to reduce the pain in his wounds and worked with all his might. After a while, his mind started playing strange tricks on him, and he even laughed at himself, but he didn't pay attention and finally completed the target just before 10 p.m. In the morning, the AI showed Joe a video of his wife and son, which made him emotional as he was so far from them. He then asked Nick how Alex had escaped, and Nick hesitated at first, But when he learned about Joe's unborn child, he decided to help Joe. He showed Joe a hidden spot behind a pillar where the camera couldn't see, and Joe started enlarging the hole with his pen. Days passed, and Joe kept expanding the hole in his free time. Finally, the hole became big enough for him to crawl through. He went inside and felt there must be a way out, but the guard found him and beat him up. When he woke up, the hole was sealed, and he was given a punishment of 1,000 turns. Nick also supported him, so his legs were being cut off, and he couldn't work. This upset Joe, and he started thinking of a plan. He realized that if no prisoner did any work, their scores would be equal, and the computer wouldn't be able to punish anyone. He convinced all the prisoners to stop working, but when the day ended, the AI announced that those with 0 points would be killed. Fearing this, the prisoners started working again, and Joe's plan failed. Nick then asked Joe to turn the mill, or he would also be killed. Finally, Joe completed one turn just before the time ran out, but he felt bad for Nick, who couldn't do even one turn without legs. That night, Nick revealed that he was actually Alex, and he had also tried to escape through the hole, but was caught by the guards and put in another room. He had intentionally hidden this from Joe, hoping someone might succeed in escaping this time. In the end, the two bid farewell to each other, and Joe went to sleep, only to be woken up by Alex's agonizing screams as he was being executed. The next day, the AI showed Joe a video of Kate and his son, now walking, making him realize how long he had been imprisoned. Enraged, Joe started cursing the company, but the computer said such behavior would not be tolerated and sentenced him to death. The company's people and the guards then came and started preparing a lethal injection. The guard also started saying nasty things about Joe's wife and son, angering Joe, who then brutally beat the guard. The AI said the guard had failed in his duty, so if Joe killed him, he would be sent to the next level. Hearing this, Joe stopped and started shouting that he was not a monster, and the company wanted to turn him into one, but he wouldn't let that happen. Suddenly, Joe found himself back in his office. It had all been a modern virtual program where everyone was connected to machines. His HR, who looked like the guard, told him that although it felt like months had passed, only an hour had gone by in reality, and everything was as it was before. Through this experiment, HR had calculated that Joe hadn't been promoted so far because he hadn't been properly challenged. When they put him in the difficult program, he completed every task given to him. Finally, the company decided to promote Joe and gave him a new, bigger cabin to work in. They also asked him to sign an agreement not to tell anyone about today's experiment. After leaving, Joe called Kate, and hearing her voice, his eyes filled with tears. He said he loved Kate and their unborn child. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.